So, welcome to everybody who is coming here to this meeting, talk, discussion, dialogue that we decided together with three Baltic countries to call it the Baltic Formula. So basically we are here in the frame of the Architecture Biennale, the 18th edition of the Architecture Biennale, which you all know. It has been curated by Lesley Lokko, and it's called Laboratory of the Future. And I hope everybody has seen the biennial that has managed to go through the different projects that the curator has chosen. I personally really liked the biennial because I'm dealing a lot with art more than architecture, I have to say, because I'm the head of the School for Curatorial Studies in Venice. And I really like the mixture between architects and artists working together about the emergency and the problematics that are affecting the world. Definitely, everybody can notice that we are really living in some special times where the climate changes, political changes, economical changes are affecting everybody. And somehow I think that events like the biennial should be an occasion to deal with some of these problematics, not just by showing the things, but basically also to do something. With the Art Biennale, I have to say it's a little bit more difficult because usually quite a lot of the projects are more like showing what is happening, documenting what is happening. But with the architecture, I think it can make a difference. Another aspect which I find quite interesting and important to be discussed is the fact that, yes, we have the biennial, we have a curator, the curator is choosing a particular topic, but the pavilions inside of the biennial are definitely playing a very important role. And the feedback that certain countries are giving to the topic that is chosen by the curator of the biennial could be something that can make a change for the future. And we had several meetings with curators of the Baltic countries, and we were basically discussing where we should go and how we should develop this dialogue. Because, you know, I have been living in Venice for several years, and I have been also the curator of the Art Biennial National Pavilion of Slovenia, but usually the Art Biennale. And what we found as well with the curatorial school is that very often, you know, sometimes those exhibitions are just coming into the city as alien, and they are leaving the city without basically leaving anything to the city, in fact. So I think with the Architecture Biennial, it could be with certain projects that have been presented, something that it makes really a difference and it leaves something to the city after the Biennale in itself. So I think with this idea of somehow creating projects that are interacting with the problematics of a city like Venice could be a constructive way to work out also in the next editions and to have proposals for the next editions of the biennial to do something that could be an example of the changes that architecture and art can make with the emergency that we are all facing. With this basic and short introduction, I would like to have the different curators of the pavilions that have been invited, because apart from the Baltic countries, we have also invited the Austrian Pavilion, who also made an extremely interesting project. We wanted to have also the Germans, but unfortunately they had a workshop today, which from my point of view also did a an extremely interesting intervention in the city and so I was very curious to get to know which were the results and the developments. And I would like to start with the Lithuanian Pavilion, also by thanking them about hosting us in this fantastic place, in this incredible construction, where we just feel like being inside of a sort of agora, ideal to have a talk and a discussion. And as you probably all know, this is the Children Forest Pavilion. And we have here the curators, Jurga Daubaraite, Egya Insule, I'm sorry, sorry for my pronunciation, and Jonas Žukauskas. Oh my God. Cool. So I would first of all start from the space. How did you choose the space? How did you find the space? Is this the ideal space that you were looking for to create this particular project, about which we would like to know more about it?
Really, really glad to open this up. Thank you. Thank you for gathering us all here, and really happy to welcome you to this installation that was built specially for this place, for this space, and it of course is on topic of forest and forest we call literacy, about ability to read processes in the forest, and it involves a wide range of contributors. But like in terms of Venice, to answer to your question, really we felt that the placement of the pavilion should also contribute to locality here. So in a way, this space, which was at the time when we saw it first, was Armenian Pavilion by artist Andrius Artunian. Before, it was never open to Biennale. And we really like this idea that it's a crossroad of Biennale visitors who come to Arsenale, just across the street from us, and then also locals who use a lot this route. But then, in a way, it's outside from usual institutions which are related to education. It's outside of Ludoteca or some other sports facilities and so on. So in a way, like it's an invitation, it's a proposition. And also we had like some school children workshops here during opening month.
How did we find the space? I will be very technical because I think that we want to share these backstories, right? Aurora, you want to get there, okay. So Lithuanian Pavilion does not have a space of its own. The planning of the project usually starts either for art as well as for the architecture with actually scouting the space. And there is different teams have different traditions, but there is a tradition to work with one particular manager in Venice. And of course, as we all are comfortable, maybe, there is a kind of inertia to first reach out to that person who others have been working with. So that is what we did as well. And we came here a year ago and were shown different spaces that were available that were in the, let's call it, portfolio of that person. And this space, was also already in the portfolio of what Jonas mentioned, and this is how it became part of Art Biennales, as part of the Art Biennale, and it is a privately owned apartment that used to be a flat. It is all taken out, all the scaffoldings, everything that made it into a flat before, and the particular interesting part is that the owner of the space says, we don't know, we haven't proved it, but that he was born here. But it is a Venetian entrepreneur who owns the place. And of course, his interest is to rent it specifically for culture events for Biennale. So with this, we are already in the middle of real estate market stories that that Biennale also facilitates.
Thank you. I was just thinking about the topic, I mean, the forest, and I was just thinking, okay, a forest inside of the city of Venice is a kind of an upset somehow. And then I was thinking, but if you think about Venice, Venice is actually made of poles from the forests of Istria, Dalmatia, and so on. So at the end of the day, it's not just an upset. And I just think that the whole pavilion, it has a kind of very well display, because I think this kind of installation in a white cube wouldn't work as it is working in this kind of context. So this is also why I was asking you about the choice of the pavilion, of the place, because I know that when an external pavilion is looking for places, usually you are scouting around all the city. But I'm also interested about the project in itself, because it's not just a project that has started here in Venice. It's a kind of a project that you started before in your country, and it's a sort of I'm sort of reading it as an archive for the future. In fact, that you are going to leave for not just the children, but also for other people, because things sometimes are really changing so quickly. And also, it's a sort of an archive that could be interesting for the people who are like living in this context, like Venice. So, is that your aim, your idea of creating this archive for the future, where you are involving the new generation in kind of understanding what a forest is, what a forest means, and so on and so on?
I have to speak now. Well, the project started more than 3 years ago when we started looking into forestry processes, and this was a proposal for architecture community, designers, researchers, environmentally focused people to look into forest processes. And this pavilion reflects what has been discussed, what has been looked at in 3 years. And Venice is just one of the kind of timeline moments which we show where we are with the project and kind of educational proposals. And after Venice, this pavilion goes back to Nida, and it will be rebuilt somewhere in the forest and continues to share this space for discussion, talking about forest processes, I don't know, Biennale processes, and anything you want to talk about.
I also wanted to know which was the response. For example, you said that you had also involvement with local community, like children from the schools, isn't it? So did you have any difficulty to get in touch with them? When you managed to have them here, which was the response of the children? Are you satisfied with your intervention here and with the relationship with the city?
I think, yeah, we had a very nice interaction by youngest people from the beginning. You know, they kind of feel very natural here. You know, from the installation days, kids who pass by, they would look through. And during opening days, while they were like music performances, kids would react it like very naturally and start playing with the sticks, building their structures, going underneath the platforms, etc. And then school kids were brought here by the teachers, and they would have workshops with Finnish educator Nuska, who you can see in the movie over there. So it's a continuation, I think, of these like pedagogical gatherings and attempts, and response by kids was, you know, simple, sweet, sincere, no? There was also a workshop for Venice teachers where I think we received most comments that they had not known so much kind of things which happen in the forest and kind of how education could approach the forest issues and topics and so on. So
I just wanted to add that we were very nicely welcomed by some people in Venice, specifically the association
Laguna del Bicchiere.
Laguna del Bicchiere. So many of the many of the contacts who were reaching out to the schools and so on, worked well through word of mouth, through people who trust each other. So we were, in a way, I would say, very lucky that this relationship, that we managed to establish this relationship, and that the space was used by these few groups. And of course, it is an engine that is needed to activate this. And this is one aspect that we did in a way to try out, because for us also this was interesting to see how does the space work as this what we call educational tool. Does it work? How is it used? And this was interesting to gather it. And we have very positive responses that motivate us to continue further. So now we are working on this, bringing back the pavilion and establishing this kind of similar use also in Lithuania. And I wanted to add about your question, how we were looking for the space. Going back, that we were looking for an outside space first. And so we are here in this courtyard under a roof because this is an outside installation. It will go back to a public outside space. So this space was, we're very happy because it provides these different types of space use. There's with roof that we can use, but as we were laughing, this space has energy certificate G, which is the lowest one. So it's basically an outside space with some roofs here and there.
It's a good task to the real estate manager. It's a good question to real estate manager. I want to rent an outside space. We don't need rooms or houses or shops.
Yeah, because I mean, in Venice, it's apparently very difficult to build anything outside. We kind of gathered other unsuccessful experiences, that whoever wants to build something outside usually is obstructed by not getting permission in the end. So we had to get the space to be able to offer it to use for everyone from the street, And I think I see invigilators, but I think they witnessed that kids really return here again and again. They developed certain routines, certain games they play. They assemble something, leave in a week, come back again, bring their friends, bring their parents and so on. So yeah, for half year became part of a extended square.
And this is possible because we are not in Arsenale, we are not in Giardini, so our entrance is free of charge. So in this terms of saying that this is a public space, yes, the doors are open. When they're open, anyone can enter. And so in a way like this, that the Lithuanian Pavilion, as many others, must look for this space again and again. This is definitely one positive aspect of this challenge, which definitely is a challenge. But, yeah.
No, I agree, because sometimes what is happening is that pavilions are looking for the spaces, they have a project in mind, and sometimes they find spaces that actually don't really get well together with the idea that they have. But in this context, I think you were quite lucky to find this space. And you're right, not having the problem of paying the ticket, it gives you really a great opportunity to involve the local community, because the ticket for the biennial is not that cheap. They are not really making such a big discount for the local people, which is a kind of an upset. But anyway, this is the biennial, but it would be nice, for example, because I know some other pavilions are organizing events, talk, workshops, and so on, and probably quite a lot of students would be happy to participate, but the tickets is kind of creating this barrier. I also would like to ask you one thing. Yes, the Italian bureaucracy is really tough. It's not just Venice, it's also the Italian bureaucracy that it makes it very hard when you decide that you want to make a change or to build something. But I think you made it quite well. After this experience that you had in Venice, Did you get any new idea of how to develop in the future your project, or are there any changes or there improvements that this experience at the Venice Biennale somehow suggested you or made in your mind? No?
Yeah, but I mean, I would really pass on this question to Estonians. I really want to hear a bit about property market, and like really that project really highlights all these issues. And I feel like really like being kind of you know, like having, I mean, your own case study, like your own specific situation is really interesting to see other projects who came into like Venice and then tried to find the place and, you know, invented constructed situation for them.
Okay, or let's move to Estonia. So Estonia has a project called Home Stage and is taking place in a flat. So now I'm going with the names. Aet Adde, Mari Muldre, curators. Then Paula Weidenbauma, performer.
Who is Latvian, by the way.
And Andrea Tam, you are... Okay, yeah, that's right. Okay, so how did you decide to do such a project? What did inspire? Did you make some inquiries about the city of Venice? Because this is, I mean, the question of the flats, of the housing are in Venice one of the biggest problems that we are facing. Now, I'm not saying every day, but we are facing it every day.
Well, I think we had many challenges. The first, let's say, idea came because we were also here during the Art Biennale, and we somehow happened to go to one home, and this gave us a lot of inspiration because we somehow really loved the feeling where you can step out of this kind of exhibition format, which is a bit abstract, but you can actually meet a person and go into a home. But then the challenges with this housing situation was, of course, very moral questions. If we are here, even though we are discussing the housing crisis, but still we as outsiders come to Venice and we are renting an apartment for enormous sums, which is, yeah, is this ethical? So I think we really had these discussions, should we kind of even do this? But at the same time, we felt that, okay, we can make a statement that, for example, Estonia doesn't come, but this would be just a drop in the ocean in a way. I think, you know, we are just a small country. I don't know if anyone actually in this overload of, you know, everything would have even noticed that Estonia just didn't come. And yeah, we made the statement that if we don't come, maybe somebody can use this apartment as an apartment. So we decided to go, which is maybe nice about this location is that actually this is a house which is owned by one family, and the owner lives in the same building, just upstairs, and we are using the downstairs. So we're not renting the whole space. He can still live there. His parents live there as well, and we're just like renting one part of it. Mari, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, maybe that the whole project actually like it came to being with the chance encounter with the space. So when Naet and Arvi did the Biennale design, and then they accidentally stepped into this actually another apartment. That's a long story. that in the end we couldn't afford the first apartment that actually started the whole process. But yeah, the space itself was actually the starting point, because then you can also talk about your encounter yourself, but somehow the feeling of stepping from the like very busy exhibition like area, stepping into an apartment, like someone's home, was left such an impression that from that impression they started thinking what to do with it, and also the living spaces, about living spaces in general.
I was actually thinking when I was looking also to some of the pictures, the entrance and everything, and then I started to think about how many pavilions that are around the city are actually ex-apartments, because Montenegro are an ex-apartment. They used to be, for example, I'm just talking about places that are next to our gallery. Bosnia, when they had, or even Cyprus during the Architecture Biennale, it's an ex-apartment. The Luxembourg used to be as well in a place which is an ex-apartment. And then there are a lot of palaces which were owned by rich families and so on, but they were places where people used to live. So somehow, you know, using a flat in Venice is definitely a business. So it's a little bit of a contradiction what you basically did. Nice, beautiful, people liked it. Some of my students managed to go, and they really loved how you have arranged the thing, how the whole things worked, and so on. But then I was just thinking, you know, this is, as you said, basically this is a business that is somehow affecting more and more as well the problematics of finding a place to live in Venice for the people who has a residency here in the city, and they are forced to leave because I don't know how much money they asked you for your rent, but definitely they must have asked you quite a lot of money in comparison of what a rent should be here in Venice for a local person. And so, yeah, and so by doing that, I mean, basically this is something that it's even more, you know, adding this problematic to the city and transforming the city basically in a sort of a museum where people will shortly, the local people shortly will start to disappear. And we are all becoming very old as well, those who are still living in the city. Just a few. Yeah. Did you have some doubts about that?
Yeah, definitely. We had all these discussions within our, and we also were actually looking about the, let's say, residential market in Venice, and we were actually looking like what are the prices if you want to buy something. And I think there is again quite a gap that the rents, which let's say the owners of this private space is what they ask for just for 6 months for Biennale. And then if you look what the prices are, if something needs to be bought, there's a gap, because actually the real estate prices here are quite the same as in Tallinn, but then the rents are enormous. And how can a person live in Venice if you know, if this Biennale is the way the locals can earn money? And actually, yeah, ever-spreading Biennale.
Yeah, also because the Biennale basically was created with this idea, because at the end of the 19th century, the city was economically collapsing. And so they just said, okay, let's create, with the idea of the universal exhibitions, you know, let's create this sort of event which is going to bring people from all different countries. And so rents, restaurants, places to sleep, hotels and so on, it's creating just a huge, enormous business. So here in Venice, we cannot live without the biennial. That's why I found quite interesting, and it's a pity that we didn't have the chance to have the Germans here, because this idea of restoring those houses that are basically empty on the Giudecca Island, the so-called casette, It's an interesting intervention, because if they are going to be able to give to the local people the opportunity to get some places where to live, or I don't know, even students who are coming to study in Venice, because students are having exactly the same problems as the local people, how to find a place where to stay. It would, I mean, if they are succeeding, this would be a constructive intervention.
Well, I can say that how we emphasized the problem, maybe artistically, not solving, of course, anything, but was that we actually have a spare room, which is completely empty. So our, let's say, pavilion itself is, in a way, a project where one person is living in about 90 square meters. And for example, one bedroom, it's just a dust room, just like an asset. I don't know, Paula, you want to comment? Or
Hello, I'm Paula.
She's living there.
I moved in 3 days ago, and the shower was clogged, and the washing machine was clogged. So there is, I think, another layer of all of that I bring in, that I am more confronted with, that I have my work contract, which also brings this liability layer on top of the flat, that when I move in, I have to keep it in order, I have to keep it together in order to get paid. And then there is another layer that goes back to Aet and Mari, that I guess you also gave deposit for the flat, right? And you should get it back. So I really, I moved in and I was like, oh my God, everything is clogged. I had to spend all my mornings watching videos how to unclog shower, unclog washing machine. Yeah, so this, I am more confronted with flat as a living organism in a way that works against me, and I push back, and somewhere in the middle is my risk, and I'm not sure what is my asset, and at the moment it's more about running around from liabilities. Mm-hmm.
I think it's also interesting to live in the city, because it's such an unusual place with different problematics. So staying in the city for a longer time, it gives you a completely different perspective. I would also like to ask you, what about the response of the visitors? What are the feedbacks that you got and that you think were really relevant for the project that you did?
I think quite good positive ones, because I think our idea was to give really many layers. So somebody who doesn't want to have a deep dive in the layers, he or she can just come, relax, lie in the bed, just have this kind of a private moment with the person, and then the one who wants to go into more discussion and so on, so they can do that. And also locals visited us quite a lot, and somehow we had so many local contacts also from the beginning, like the local carpenters union, some church which is next to us, which we donated some things to the church, and somehow we quite easily became like part of the community in a way, very easily. Yeah. But Paula,
Well, mostly people come in, and then there is a big conversation about positionality. So who is living here? Sebastian, are you living here? No, Paula is living there? Okay, and then the more you invite this kind of game, the more you invite also talk about economics, and as much as it concerns you, they approach me and ask, oh, are you getting paid? How much are you getting paid? And it, it gets personal very fast. But everyone loves it after the fountain show. We have a fountain show in the bathroom, so if they are not, sometimes they're like, what this is about, I don't understand. And then it's the fountain show, and I say it's a mess. And they're like, I know, yeah.
I think it's quite important to have this sort of situation, because the biennial is like a huge art fair where you just move from one pavilion to the other, also the main exhibition. And so to have a sort of, resting oasis where you can relax, discuss, have exchanges, I think it's a brilliant idea, and we should have more of these things during the Venice Biennale, rather than, expecting the people to run through the different pavilions. Don't you think so?
Where are the mics? There's no mics on that side.
So let's move to the Latvians, and we have this kind of, I think most of you saw it because it's impossible not to see it, as long as it's really such a seducing place inside of the Arsenale. So we have the first pavilion inside of the official venues of the biennial. But I mean, very, very seducing. TCL is the title. And we have here Ernest Cherbulis, yeah. Uldis Jauzems Peterson and Ints Vangelis. So,
No, but that was the way.
welcome to this talk. Basically, you are also somehow with this project presenting several ideas from different countries with all the different products that are somehow seducing the visitor. It's also a little irony against the Biennale, to the Biennale. Let's not use the word against, to the Biennale, that is, putting together in this kind of old-fashioned way of, it's the only exhibition in the world that is still using the nations, because all other big exhibitions all over the world are not using, anymore this kind of 18th century model. So you are, so how, which were the principles that brought you to create this kind of seductive work?
That was very, I didn't actually understand if there was a question, but yeah, we couldn't contribute much to the choosing the place. We were kind of defined, our condition was very defined. We knew that we will be in the middle of Arsenale. And we also know that all this scenography of the Arsenale, it has some kind of rhythm. It has this kind of curatorial exhibition. There are country pavilions, and somewhere there is Latvia, where when the people get there, they are already kind of, let's say, tired, and so we wanted to, let's say, comfort them somehow.
Extreme marketing strategy.
Extreme marketing strategy. So that they got to a place which they kind of knew in a way. That's why we tried to work on a store. So you kind of enter a regular store in the middle of Arsenale. So that's how about space. If we continue this discussion about the space, how we get there. So we don't have much to add there, except when we, with such a small budget, we kind of also come and construct the pavilion. So we are doing everything, starting from the idea, curatorial aspects, till the kind of implementing the pavilion. And this takes time, and during this time you also kind of become a Venetian in a way, or you become a local, and you also feel how city changes and how the city kind of, you see basically the Biennale people in the beginning, they are running around, and everybody went to the same shops. So I guess how also locals perceive this is kind of also interesting experience to kind of finishing the previous topic.
I would like to add that we are actually occupying quite a small area of Venice, and we could actually say that Arsenale is part of, as well as this place where we are now, we are in front of Arsenal building. So in a way, we could look on it as if we leave, imagine for 1 year, everyone leaves the Arsenal building and they need to occupy another space somewhere on the other side of Venice. That could be an experiment that could give answers to, should we change something in is this change of venue spaces actually giving any impact? It should be like a big movement, not like small individual movements, but it should be like a bigger movement. But yes, I would say that the it was not for us the space. It was that we became like a little artisan collective living. Ince moved in with his whole family for 2 2 weeks with the kids and his wife. So maybe we should occupy some abandoned buildings somewhere on the other side of Venice and just fix them a bit and make pavilions there. I don't know. It's just an idea, old maybe.
So about the space, I don't know what to more add. Actually, of course, we want to predict that we will be like the bacon in this darkness in Arsenal, because in some way architecture is very predictable in their scenography, more or less, and that's what actually we can see in there. So of course, it's a place of the comfort, because you even don't think, you just all your feelings, the vision, all senses actually give you the signals that you are like in a safe space, you are in the shop. So that's a bit a kind of key of our success, I think, in this case. But about the living and being Venetian, I think we have a proven today, after the gap for months not being Venice, went into the bar and they already know what we drink because they know us. So yeah, we are the locals.
So you feel like you are a Venetian. I have to say that when I saw your pavilion, I just thought that you really didn't produce so much CO2 for transportations and other things, because I think it's a kind of pavilion that is made in, I would say, almost in an ecological way. If I'm usually looking, it's a kind of professional distortion, how pavilions are made, the type of material, what they brought, how hard it could have been transportation inside of the city of Venice. Probably you just needed one boat to get all the things there, if I'm not wrong. And so I think on that side, it was quite a very smart idea to work it out. And I don't think it was very expensive, or it was.
Maybe morally sometimes, but in in general, yeah, that was idea from the beginning, to do the pavilion from the ready-mades, because that's this Venice period is very short kind of time, just 6 months, and then you need to throw it out or give to German pavilion, or I don't know what to do with all this waste. So we had this idea to borrow the things. So the pavilion consists of two parts. One is these ready-mades, which we borrowed from a real, let's say, supermarket in Riga, which we will give back until the story is back. And then the second part is cardboard, which is very lightweight. I think we probably have the lightweightest pavilion. So yeah, in that sense, we thought about these things.
And it's actually a very, it's a sort of pavilion that you have to discover step by step, I have to say. Because as we were discussing before we started this talk, first of all, you have one aspect, the fact that you have to choose, which is made in a kind of a playful way, so you don't even realize it because you are kind of seduced by the beauty and aesthetic of the products, which basically I think not so many people are actually reading the ideas that are presented on the different products, because they are so colorful, they are beautiful, they are amazing. But then I think the next step, thinking about your gesture and everything, I as I was telling you, I went on the website and there I sincerely started to read all the ideas that were behind each project that was presented. And you are covering an incredible amount of ideas, of projects, of things that could and might change certain things in this collapsing world.
True. Yes, we kind of we celebrated the 10 10th time in Biennale since Latvia is participating in Biennale. So there are most or all pavilions from these years. So all ideas are there. But since you are saying that it's you can, yeah, but that was our kind of let's say concept how we treated the space. The visitor is really kind of tired at that point, and you can just you can wander around. And when we were there, some people also they sometimes they passed, but next time they come just to dive in. So we wanted to have these different layers. You can have it just like as a installation, or you can dive in if you want, and the next level you can combine the ideas, and the next level you can research the ideas. You can kind of collect different years of the country participations, so you could, I mean, we wanted to have this also some kind of playground or open, let's say, possibility to experiment with it at the same
I would
time.
like to add that it's sort of the way how you usually get to know new things. For example, music. You would probably be at a party or somewhere, or listening to radio in your car or something, and then you hear the song, and then it kind of, oh, I like this music, and then you enter this realm of genres and all that. And I think it's the same with architecture. If I speak from the curatorial perspective, that's we thought that our visitor we would like to engage with all levels of visitors, from children to non-architects, and how to do it. It's I think from the most basic. You need to use those basic principles to actually, at the end, no one will be interested in it if it's too difficult to engage with. And that's also what supermarket the comfort, all the comfort is the answer.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, supermarket is something that most of the people like to go and spend their time inside. Apart.
But that's also a kind of a side or parallel story of that. And the pandemics was also a good catalyst of that. Suddenly all the public spaces which we used to go, I don't know, cinemas, theaters, marketplaces, or whatever, were closed. The only doors which were open were these doors of the stores and outside. So in that way, I mean, the supermarkets or shops, they are some kind of a bit neglected by the architects, but they, and even for us, we kind of use these spaces to get things for or recipes, but we kind of don't pay attention to the spaces where they are. And let's say maybe they're probably the most, let's say by square meter, they're occupying most of the city, but we kind of don't pay attention to these spaces. We don't kind of consider them as architecture. And why so?
Yeah.
I mean,
Have you thought about instead of display this, let's call them work, inside of a pavilion, rather into a real supermarket by mixing it between, you know, fruits, other products. So the usual buyer comes there and finds himself kind of, you know, I don't say shocked, but surprised by finding these unusual products.
Yeah, actually, we're considering and thinking about as we like some kind of the partisan marketing. Actually, like to promote the pavilion if we this products spread somewhere in the shop, and people goes to make this ordinary choice of the pack of the chips, and there's a pack who really looks like the natural one, and but when we grab, will be the surprised. Honestly, need to say that the working on that make changed actually the way how each of us look on the shop, and the way how we look now to the shop is for everyone is a different one, and shops can actually have more the social function in it and become more useful, not just only for the selling the goods and things. Actually, but then by making choice, this is a way how the shop can involve the local society, because when it's on discussing some project in the a local place, then who come and say their opinion, those people who are really interested, because mostly people are busy and they don't want to go somewhere, but the shop is a place where they go, and why didn't offer them make choice there by the choosing, for example, the specific product. If you choose this product, mean you make your vote for the something. This is one idea which comes up. I think, yeah, the real result of everything come very, very lately, because the main theme was the laboratory of future, and actually that's what we did. We built the laboratory, and we have such kind of experiment. How many people make the choices? How many people throw the balls? We get the data which the Biennale don't have ever. They just have this quantitative data, how many visitors have. But now we can actually have the data, how many of them already interact with the things, how many of them are interested till the end. Because the throwing ball is like you are interact. When you make the choice of products and go to the till, get this receive. So it's mean you are interested till the end because you want it. You want it your choice take with you in some way. What they do with them, that's another question. But yeah, then we will see. We have this data, and it will be interesting how we can interpret it. We're not can answer that. That's we were just blamed that we not introduce and don't tell about what about be all pavilion, but we not can give this answer because we don't know what about it be, because it's laboratory we build, and now it's work, and it's kind of different because most of pavilions are built, and actually we can say the work on them is a finish because they just show up. But in our case, we build, and then only then the pavilion starts to work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you. Now we come to the Austrian pavilion, which is called Participation, Beteiligung. That's right. Cool. And we have Harald Trapp, and I think some other people also came from the pavilion.
Yes. We have Gerhard Flora back there, we have Philipp Oberthaler, we have Christian Mörtel, and we have Julia Klaus here, because we are 17, so always a lot of us are around. And we have Hermann Czech, who curated together with us the pavilion.
Yeah, so you had this crazy idea that you wanted to kind of crash down the wall that is dividing the biennial, the gardens, from the, say, the rest of Venice, and of course the biennial didn't give you the permission.
Yes, and I think the idea is not that crazy, because first of all, we didn't really, actually we would have to break through some walls, but we would just shift the boundary into our pavilion to make people more aware of this boundary. And we wanted to, exactly in the face of what we were discussing before, reverse this kind of spatial politics of the Biennale, expanding and excluding people, as expanding into the city. So we are in the lucky position that our pavilion is there since 90 years, almost 90 years. And it was built on a ground that was already taken away from the public Giardini, and even an extension of the public Giardini, because the island of St. Elena is rather new. So it was only filled in the beginning of the 20th century. The city part itself, the buildings were built in a couple of years in the 1920s. So it's one of the newest parts of Venice. And immediately the Biennale enclosed a part of this new neighborhood. Yeah? And if you go on the other side, you can also clearly see they really showed them the back. Because there's this nice facade of the Venetian pavilion, and our pavilions, they're all very nice, but then there's this kind of back facade of the Venetian pavilion, which is really like the Berlin Wall. And they are facing this since 100 years. So our idea was, if you are there for 90 years, you should at least try to make contact to your neighbors. And usually you also invite your neighbors. And of course, that's not so easy with the, as you say, ticketing policy of the Biennale. So
quite strict.
Yes. So we thought, as we have this space, we are in this privileged position, we hand over half of this pavilion to the neighboring part of the city, which at the same time, because we started the whole process with the research, contacting the people there, talking to them, and although it's a very nice neighborhood, and they have rather large apartments there, and a lot of apartments are empty, they don't really have gathering spaces. So they're gathering in some small parts of the monastery that is there. They have a small shop that is abandoned of 8 square meters where they do exhibitions. So immediately when we contacted them, they started an initiative and were really developing a program, what all could happen in our pavilion. And also, kind of infrastructure that we would provide for them. So that's this scaffolding that we built and so on. And as you said, but then, of course, there's this little problem with getting the permissions. And that unfolded in a rather unfortunate way, because the first contacts, informal contacts, were not positive with the Biennale. It was just, they said, if you get all the necessary permissions, we won't stop you from doing it. But once we contacted then the Heritage Office, which is also, I have to explain to you, the situation in the Giardini is like this, that the ground belongs to the city of Venice, the buildings belong to the nations, and the heritage is Italian, or the city of Venice. So you have to negotiate with these entities. And also the first informal contacts with the Heritage Office, this lady was quite, I know St. Helena, and this might be, also she didn't really object to the concept, but I have to talk to the Biennale, which officially has nothing to say. The Biennale, as is this black hole of strange entity, nobody knows what its power actually is, but yeah, and very rich, yeah. So and next time when we met then the lady, it's a very nice place. They are in the Doge Palace,
Yeah.
So if you go there, it's like, and to the left and to the right of her were sitting 2 people from the Biennale, and their heads all went like this, So in the end, it was very clear that they then developed reasons. I can't put it in any other way, because they said this first idea that we had, I don't know whether you have seen the pavilion or whether you know the situation. We are very close to this boundary wall towards St. Helena, so we would just have to break through our courtyard wall and this wall. And this area is, as I said before, is kind of the, how can you say, the bio dump of the Biennale behind our pavilion. All the kind of branches and so on they cut, they throw there. So it's mainly inhabited by rats and mosquitoes. And it would have taken just 3 meters of this ground where no visitor ever goes to fence off, because of course the people coming in without an entry ticket from St. Helena shouldn't be able to enter the Giardini, because we knew that would be a no-go for the Biennale, people freely entering the whole Biennale. We just wanted them to enter our pavilion. The reason given then from the official reason or unofficial reason was we would privatize this piece of ground in the back of our pavilion, these 3 meters, because it wouldn't be accessible anymore for other visitors. Because the whole Giardini are a monument now, and if you make one part of a monument not accessible from all parts of the monument, we would privatize this. But although we would make it publicly accessible, so it's a certain paradoxical logic. So we, in a way, didn't really accept this logic, but we thought, okay, then we tried to build a bridge, because then we're not touching the ground. We kind of drew this bridge, made a proposal, had structural engineers coming in. There's all these problems also, of course, with the greenery. It's also protected, so you have to find a way to maneuver through this greenery, the bushes and the trees, and handed this in. And then it is often with the Biennale and with a lot of institutions, you don't hear anything back, and then you ask and so on. And then there's this famous Conferenza des Vizios, where they all come together, completely secret meeting. I think it's this, again, the black hole of the Biennale, that there's kind of some institutions and
it's like Kafka.
Yes, and legal entities are meeting. And then we got a protocol of this meeting 6 weeks or 8 weeks before the opening. Yeah, now it's not possible because we are changing the use of the pavilion, of the monument, which is for exhibitions. So if we kind of split it in 2 halves, and 1 half is then for events or whatever, or public use, it's not the dedicated use that the monument originally had. And that was all we ever heard. We never really got a final document or whatever. We're still waiting. And so we decided, and we had to decide from the start, because we knew that the chances would be, let's say, very optimistically 50-50 to get this through this project. We also started this research in what we call the spatial politics of the Biennale in general, so the relationship of the city and the Biennale, as it developed, as you said, from the 19th century. So this first idea of a city marketing in the world, probably, very cleverly thought out by the then mayor and the politicians, which worked very well from the start. So it was really, this city was so much in decay. If you read reports from that time and around the beginning of the 19th century, beginning of the 19th century, then 20th century, it was in dire straits. So Venice was really in a very bad situation. So it worked very well, and as you say, it's a very important economical factor for Venice since then. You have to imagine, last year, Art Biennale, 800,000 visitors, inhabitants, 49,500 or something of the old city of Venice. So those are the relationships. In Architecture Biennale, it's probably 300,000 visitors, so it's not that much. So we had to have these two projects running next to each other, because they thought, I think, we would completely change the project. Because when we met them unofficially with the lady from the heritage offices, they said, why are you coming with the same project again? Yeah. So because informally we had asked before already, and they said, that's no way, you can't do this, and it's a precedent, and what happens if every pavilion has these crazy ideas of bringing the population in, and Venetians and so on. They even suggested to us to buy tickets for the Venetians, so that would be a better solution. So then they could enter on our budget and have their events in our pavilion. So it's really a very strange situation that we encountered. So as I said, we did this research, and you can see it in the pavilion, and as you experienced. Yeah? So as soon, of course, if we rent a flat for this kind of cultural events, the prices go up enormously. Yeah? And they themselves in the Arsenale are setting the pace in a way. Because the Slovak commissioner yesterday told us they are paying for 140 square meters or 120 square meters, 140,000 euros to the Biennale. Yeah.
It's a fee. They don't call it a rent. It's a fee.
They don't even get lighting rails, or they don't even get lighting. You have to pay the guards yourself, everything. Yeah? You have to pay everything yourself. That's just for being part of the Biennale on 120 square meters in the Arsenale. And of course, you don't have to be an economist to understand what the pressure then is on all these kind of properties around the Biennale. And if you come here very often, you will see it. There's more and more of these former flats, former workshops are converted into Biennale bases with these kind of more or less dubious agents and the website of the Biennale, that then are selling them, yeah? Which is, in a capitalist world, a very normal process. Yeah? But the question is then, would there be a possibility, and we are now negotiating, or we're discussing with this group of commissioners that formed quite recently, as you also suggested, to in a way, and you are doing this also in a certain way already, being aware of that fact, and then using, for example, a house where there is the owner still living, and where he then can finance the house because he is letting the space for the Biennale. So that's models of cooperation or coexistence that might help both sides, but it needs this kind of awareness for all the pavilions, and all the participants.
Yeah, it should be a dialogue. This is what somehow I'm thinking. I have always thought that is a little bit missing, because I remember in 1999 and 2001 when Harald Zeman was the curator of the biennial, he used to do with the artists that were participating in the biennial every evening a meeting with them. And this is something that somehow all the different national pavilion should somehow get the habit of getting together and discussing certain matters and aspects, because this is an incredible chance to get together from all over the world, because there are almost 100. Architecture Biennale a little bit less, but with the Art Biennale you have around 100 pavilions. But the problem is that when everybody's doing the Venice Biennial, it seems as, everybody's just focusing on the biennial with this idea of the prize, which is totally fake. No, it's true. And because they decide many months before who is going to win. But everybody's focused on that, trying to make the best participation, and nobody's actually exploiting this incredible opportunity that actually the biennial is offering. A dialogue, discussion, getting together, and finding also a way how to cooperate and collaborate in the future, and as well including the city without leaving it out. Yes.
I have a question. What does it mean to you, for you to be in the Biennale? I mean, why don't you do? Okay, so my question is, why is important to you to be here? So for the, I guess for the things you just said, but at the same time, is there a way for you to boycott? I mean, to find another way to be out of the box, but at the same time to engage all the nice things you just said.
I think there's two answers to the question. The first is we are a little bit bigger and longer there than Estonia, but they wouldn't care. You know, if just Austria is closing the pavilion. So if all the pavilions would gather together, they would have a big problem. But the interesting thing is, we found out that these pavilions are here since now 120 years, and only since COVID, for the first time, they talk to each other and try to form this kind of group. Yeah? Which is completely also a paradoxical situation. So, and we discussed it, if they go on strike 60 pavilions, they can close shop, yeah? So then that would be really a power. The other thing is, why we did it? Because we are architects, and we found out that the beginning of the Architecture Biennale was Vittorio Gregotti being the curator of Art Biennale in 1975, and he said he wanted to have an architecture exhibition where architects and artists were working together. And he said, if we do anything like an architecture exhibition as part of the Biennale, it has to invite international architects to work projects in Venice on the problems of Venice, you know? And that's why we're here. So, you know, because it's not that we are also arrogant enough to say we could save Venice or whatever, but if we have this budget, if we have this possibility, then this is one of our tasks as architects, you know. So, and Venice has so many problems, it's so exemplary for the problems of many cities, so that it is really a wonderful task. And so it's also for us really surprising that almost no pavilion or no part of this exhibition is engaging with the problems of Venice. Yeah, despite I think one of the best aspects of their exhibition was walking through there. It sounds like jingles from an advertising agency. How do we live together? Common ground, laboratory of the future. Huh? That's what they are shouting out every year, yeah? And they just don't care. Yeah?
I think it will be interesting to see how all these pavilions are going to gather together and to make such a big decision, you know, and to hack somehow what the Biennale is doing. In the context of the city also. So yeah, thank you.
It's also like really important, I guess, to point out the project which actually engaged with the format, and then they were realized and somehow proposed other ways of actually being in the Biennale. You know? In a way, like, you know, Nordic Pavilion, you know, or Baltic Pavilion. We are here actually as a consequence of that Baltic Pavilion, where the Baltic Fund was later set up to actually have the representation of 3 countries together, actually. And the Baltic Pavilion was 2016, which was one pavilion for 3 countries. So of course, like, kind of going outside of the format. So in a way, like, the kind of the kind of positive thing in a way is that the kind of experience of being able to change that format really is encouraging, you know. So maybe things are not so bad, it's a mutual relationship, you know. Like we are in the Biennale, and then, like, questioning the format is also kind of confirming the format in a way. So it's interesting, like, to have this conversation of like quite diverse projects, which are Baltic projects, and then Austrian project, which is actually on the Biennale, on the format itself. So I think it's a really kind of nice, I guess, proposition for discussion, really, like, of interlocking of these ideas. Yeah.
Thank you. The collective act, when they invited me, they already had the profound idea, exhibition idea, that the pavilion should not be an exhibition building which includes contents of how ground is distributed and at disposal for people. But they had the idea that the pavilion itself would be an exhibit by parting it. And this in some way, they even related to an analysis I had written a few years ago to a Biennale exhibit by Dina and Dina, when they described, when they showed all pavilions in one exhibit in the main pavilion, and had texts written to each of the pavilions. And in this pavilion, in this text, I analyzed especially the symmetry of the pavilion, which in fact is an unmodern, an anti-modern aspect, which it has in common with many pavilions. But this anti-modern property of the pavilion was very well suited to show this partition in half. And so I think all the personal feelings that were involved in the organizational difficulties were part of the concept, even the possibility that it would not, that the access from outside would not be allowed by the Biennale was involved in the concept. We said, when this happens, then it's even more interesting, which it, in fact is true.
Yeah, that's for sure. It was obvious that they would never give you the permission. No, of course. No, but I think that, especially for the architecture, I should be also with art. I think it would be really important to get together and trying to find a new model of collaboration, like this dialogue, this discussion that we are having today, which is including 4 countries at the moment, could really, be a kind of a proposition for a future laboratory, just by quoting the words by Lesley Lokko. And it's something that we owe to, not just to the city of Venice, which is somehow a sort of microcosmos of what is actually happening at a higher and bigger level in the rest of the world. But actually, I think we cannot, in the today's situation, have the how to say it, we cannot waste time and money with useless projects where every country is just, thinking about itself and presenting bare things.
And there are 2 points I would like to add is, first of all, also what it was important for us was a different definition, or to use a different definition of participation, because participation is now this kind of like sustainability, every process works with participation, and then there's a kind of a strange compromise in the end. Nobody's really happy, but people were kind of had their say, were kind of participating, but only in having a say. So, but being architects, I think the interesting thing is, if you take this word part really literally, you have to give up a part for participation. Yeah, you have to hand over space, and that's something that I think that would be also interesting, to have more of the situations of direct neighborhood, like you're doing now in your building. Yeah? So between such an activity as an exhibition and this global exhibition and local people living there and so on. So that's the one point. The other point is that I don't know what your experience was, but there's this kind of, how can you say, schism almost, this kind of gap between the curated part and Lesley Lokko, for example, in this and us. She never contacted us. She never visited the pavilion, I'm pretty sure. And there was no contact. Yeah? And this topic is given, in our case, a year after we have handed in our concept. Yeah? And so it's also a bit strange. We contacted her to support us against the Biennale in a way, and she said by her contract she's not allowed to intervene. on the behalf of any pavilions. That was the only response. And the other only contact we had was this kind of school meeting. We are like school children for 2 minutes. Were presenting our projects to her and the Biennale, and then it was a short waving, and that was it. Yeah. So it's really because you are a curator, and this was this kind of, you started with this, there's this idea, and so there's a kind of a gap between the pavilions and the curator. I don't know, did she ever visit you, or did she talk to you? Yeah.
But maybe I have a theory for that. You know, well, if we have theories on things that what is happening with Biennale, but remember the story with Estonian Pavilion. And the gas pipe, which connected German pavilion and Russian pavilion, which was really encouraged by Biennale curator Aaron Betsky at the time, which Russians and Germans protested against the pipe, which was laid to, in a way, reflect gas pipe which was laid under the Baltic Sea at the time, you know, which was known as Nord Stream 1. And then later Nord Stream 2 was built, but never launched, and so on. So in a way, like maybe the consequence of that scandal, geopolitical scandal, is a consequence of you know, having that written in your contract. I don't know, but maybe, you know. So it's in a way like a constant negotiation. Is a question like really. Is what should be addressed in those projects, you know, and then like maybe in the case of that pipe was you know, very difficult geopolitical question addressed, which made a lot of you know, kind of controversy around the format of the Biennale, and of course, like the very powerful pavilions were really unhappy and really very much provoked into kind of responding to that. So I guess, like, you know, like there's a lot of things in our hands. You know, we can, you know, we always twist and turn the format in itself with the topics which we bring. You know. The kind of question, like for me, like you know, is the Biennale a topic at all?
I wanted to add a bit to the late discussion about that. Maybe those small acts, like fun acts or kind acts or provocative acts, are the only option that like Baltic countries can bring to Biennale to create this awareness that we also see something, but we cannot speak that loud. We can like create a small itch, and then someone else kind of sees it and says, yeah, look, it's this or that. We are kind of creating this background, and then someone else can pick it up because we're not strong enough to create the whole thing ourselves. That's just like addition to.
But if there were 20 or 25 pavilions already together and they would work together, I think this would be quite powerful. Because,
yeah,
you know, we're bringing
fantastic.
all the budget, we are owning the houses, we're paying for this whole thing, you know, and the Biennale, as I say, is this black hole. Nobody knows exactly what happens to the 140,000 euros that they get from Slovak country. And
not just the Slovak, there are so many countries. And they are restoring new places. And those places are owned by the municipality, and they are given for free to the Venice Biennial, by the way. Just with the idea that they have to restore it. But, you know, I just think, you know, that most of the countries are not aware of the power that basically we have. And we are not using it. Because as you said, if, you know, there wouldn't be the participation of the national pavilions, I mean, the Venice Biennale wouldn't be the Venice Biennale anymore. And there is such an amount of money that is given into the biennial, not just, you know, for the pavilions which are paying the rent or the fee, how it is called, to the Venice Biennial, but just think about the investment that you are doing when you are organizing your show. And each pavilion is really investing at least 100,000 euros inside, I mean, transportation, display, curators, artists, architects, guardians, all these sorts of things. So it is an incredible amount of money, even though this one that doesn't really go directly to the biennial. So pavilions have an incredible power, and slowly these 25 countries should start to be aware and include more and more countries in it.
I just wanted also to say, please, anyone, questions are join in this discussion. It's just we're sitting with our backs towards you. It's not a wall. Join in. And thank you, Matteo, as you already did. Well, of course, what I wanted to add was I was reflecting on what Latvian team said, that a supermarket is a space of comfort. Of course, like these small iterations or every year there are strategies or formats that are proved or tested here. So Venice does give space, or Biennale does give space for them to be tested, because obviously they also reflect the realities where all the teams come from. So that after 30 years of neoliberalism in Latvia, supermarket is a space of comfort is obviously a cynical and very, very dark reality. The same as in Estonia, in a way, like we all faced in Tallinn as well as in Riga. Don't know about Vilnius. I'm from Latvia as well. That the Airbnb or like rented beds are also rising. So there's obviously like comparisons or very close realities that we share, and then they come here in Venice together. So that is what I see. Still, like, okay, we can ask like where this money goes to, and that's big questions. But to keep this space in Venice open for these questions to come together. So yes, it's like question of accelerating the exchange actually. Is a precious one for us actually to bring. I don't know, like what is the trace that is left in Venice. It's like we experience that it is on a very human level. There is exchange by meeting amazing people and collaborations that will last also long term, or exchanges that will last long term. So by providing the resources and Venice providing the space of all of us coming here, I'm trying not to be cynical. Like it's also a very precious moment. Exactly. So how to highlight the direction where you're going, how to really appreciate it. I think that's the question.
That's why we also, I don't know in your case, I think it's still different, but many of the pavilions have commissioners who are representatives of the owners, and they stay for many years. So that's why we think to work with this group is really interesting, because we are coming and going, but these commissioners, many of them are staying. And so that's why we think, and you can also see they are quite hesitant, because they have to report to ministers and so on. It's political and so forth, but this might be a chance, to have something, to start something, as I say, with small things, how do you book accommodation, where do you go? We did a little survey already with a couple of pavilions responding, and collect this data, how much money do you spend on accommodation? Yeah? As I said, and do you use Airbnb, or could you find corporations with local initiatives that then give you accommodation possibilities in this kind of cassette, and for this money, parts of these buildings could be renovated again, and so on and so on. I think there's quite a lot of potential, as you say, and you said before, it's just so unbelievable that this potential was never tapped into. Yeah.
Absolutely. Is there any question from the public? As Egya.
So you say that we have a lot of power as pavilions, we have money and everything. So what's the goal? Is the goal just to shake the Biennale institution to become more human? Or maybe theoretically we want to just shut it down and make our new Biennale, I don't know, in Fiji? So what's the... I'm just dropping ideas. So what's the goal if you say that we have this power? So what do we want to achieve with that power?
I think it's very simple. You know, if you normally you have the state or the city providing, for example, social housing or something like that, and if you know this city doesn't really have the or generate the money anymore, is not willing to do that, and you have such a powerful institution that gathers so much money every year, so why not use that money for as we said, you know, in the 1975. It was quite normal to think that if you invite architects, they should develop projects for the city. And in our case, we could then even use part of the budgets to invest it in the city.
So we want to shake the institution to become, so it becomes more.
No, I'm not that. I don't really care that much about the Biennale as an institution. Yeah? It is just we are participating. As I said, the Biennale did never speak to us. You know, we were lucky because we had this kind of slightly attention in the media. So President Chikuto came to our opening very briefly and said, "Hello, we are all friends. We need to talk." And then he went away. And so he might talk to us again, but at least that, you know. And what contact did you ever have to any high officials of the Biennale? Never. So as I said, we just don't really have to care about this institution. It provides the framework for our participation, but then the individual contributions could engage with the city. In a you know, this has to be developed, how this is possible, and what's the kind of a way that is really not interfering from an hegemonial point of view, so that we are kind of telling the Venetians how to live in Venice. But I think there are possibilities, because there's lots of local initiatives that are already working on the problems of Venice, and we could cooperate with those.
It's just the methodology. Can I just say one thing? It's just the methodology. We don't want to make the Biennale shut down or whatever. It's just the methodology. Because, as I said, I mean, we have a great opportunity to exchange ideas, like their supermarket. I mean, an exchange of ideas to get to know what is happening in other countries. Well, maybe we can find some inspiration. Maybe we can find some suggestion. Maybe we can find some new ideas that we can apply to the context of the country where we are living it. So it has to be an opportunity. At the moment, it's not really an opportunity.
I think in one of the texts in our catalog, as far as I remember, the danger of the Biennale to Venice is compared to another danger, the water, but nobody wants to get rid of the water.
It's a very okay. I recently. Oh, it is, yeah. I only recently moved to Venice, so it's a very early observation. But my observation is that residents on the whole are very supportive of the Biennale. They enjoy it, they support it. But there is a big contention in access to the Biennale sites when the Biennale isn't on. So residents can't get into the Arsenale. They can't get into the Giardini anymore when the Biennale isn't on. I can remember long ago, you know, you could walk in the Giardini between shows, but not anymore. And it's a beautiful place that's now closed off. And the Arsenale, the residents feel quite strongly about the fact that they can't get access to the site. I think, I mean, that could be a goal. That's a very small goal, I think, in a way.
I mean, the problem with Giardini is that some of the pavilions during the winter time have been damaged. But there has been also an idea and a project that, for example, the pavilion should be open also during the rest of the year. I can't remember who was the cultural head of the Venetian municipality who actually was proposing that the pavilion should be used, not just, you know, to show simply exhibitions over there, but to do something else. But at the end, the problem is that they don't have the heating, probably. And basically, there was not a real concrete project to be developed. And this is why actually never happened. And yeah, I agree. The place is very nice. The residences should be going, but they definitely use some of those episodes when some of the pavilions were damaged, not to let the people in.
But we did a little research in that as well, and the vandalism happened because they are closed. Because then young people are jumping over the walls. There's no inhabitation of the park. You know, normally a park, there's people, you know, and then there's hardly any vandalism. But we have to also vandal-proof our pavilion every year, of course, because, you know, I would jump over the wall and then spray around or whatever, yeah? But so I think this is, again, a very strange argument, so that they say pavilions were vandalized. Yeah, they were vandalized because the park is closed, and not because it's open.
I knew that they were squatted, but there is a guy who is standing in front of the entrance of the biennial, and if he sees anybody, he comes out with the sort of a gun and start running after you. Quite terrible one. Any other question? Would you like to have a drink and continue the conversation with a drink? Okay, so I would like to thank everybody. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. I think we had a great dialogue and exchange of visions and opinion, and let's hope that out of that we are going to build something constructive in the short future and in the long terms. Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks for having and moderating this discussion. I mean, it's...
It was a real pleasure with such a nice people. I couldn't do.
Thank you, Aurora, very much. Thanks.